up here. Alpine plants shrink to dwarf size. And Ben maintains you haven't really seen small until you see an ice worm. If conditions are right, we might just find some.
I guess it's not very apparent at first glance, but it's definitely there. You just have to look harder for it. And these ice worms don't necessarily keep 9 to 5 hours. Usually they come out at night, and so you've got to time your day around theirs.
Apparently, the fabled ice worms only show themselves after the sun leaves the icy slopes in shade. But a quick glance reveals nothing. Mount Rainier's Paradise Glacier just looks like dirty ice. Then we look again. Some of those black flecks are actually moving. It turns out Ben wasn't just looking for a day on the mountain and a good grade.
So here's one, there's one right there.
The proof is right under our feet.
They're all over the place here.
They're thick, right at the top right here.
Ice worms are just 2 centimeters long and as thin as a thread.
These worms are pretty easy to spot, and they come up to the surface when it's about dusk.
Most worms don't like the cold. Ice worms have no insulation, and their blood is not laced with antifreeze. Instead, they possess the unique ability to boost their own energy output as the temperature drops. Their fuel is their food. They eat microscopic algae and bacteria, which is plentiful in the ice.
Somehow they've diverged, they've adapted, their genes have changed so that they can survive on ice and actually thrive on it.
For ice worms, 22 degrees is too cold. They freeze. 40 degrees is too warm. They turn to mush. They're also apparently rather picky. They don't like snow. Ice worms survive only in ice.
If we go from the glacier that we're on right now, the Paradise Glacier, over to the Muir snowfield, we'll find no ice worms there.
Scientists know remarkably little about the life cycle of ice worms.
I'm interested in how deep they are.
Ben digs into the glacier. The deeper he goes, the fewer worms he finds.
I'm about 2 feet down there, maybe. It seemed like right in about maybe the top inch or two was where most of them were.
Yet ice worms have appeared deeper, 10 feet down, peeking out of the wall of a crevasse.
Yeah, there it is. See that guy right there?
Yep. Ice worms bore through supposedly solid ice with ease. Speed up this sequence and they appear to glide right through. Scientists don't know how they do it. Perhaps they find tiny cracks. Or maybe they melt their own paths through the ice.
They have a head pore, and one suggestion is that they actually secrete some substance that melts the ice in front of them and that they can burrow through solid ice that way.
A scientist at Rutgers University found this evidence in his microscope. An ice worm secreting a white substance from its head. It's still unconfirmed, but he thinks it could well be the substance that helps them push through the ice.
This is probably the most ice worms in one spot that has ever been recorded.
Ben shipped some Northwest worms and their ice to Rutgers University as part of a study for NASA.
6, 5, 4, 3.
And why would NASA spend $200,000 to study such creatures? Because out in deep space, the Galileo spacecraft detected something on one of Jupiter's moons, a very high tolerance for cold. The same NASA-funded scientist, Rutgers' Dan Shane, also recorded these scenes at a glacier in Alaska. There, ice worms virtually swarmed a glacial melt pool.
These are all little worms right here. I mean, there's a good 100 in that square foot.
In some glaciers in the North Cascades, you may have billions of ice worms.
Professor Peter Wimberger says ice worms appear to be uniquely northwestern. They have only been found in the Cascades, the Olympics, and Alaska. Nowhere else in the world.
They live in this domain that, in a sense, is almost unimaginable. How would something make its living, basically live its whole life cycle in ice?
The greatest mystery of all may be, how did a tiny animal confined strictly to ice arrive on separate, isolated mountaintops? One theory has it that they rode the giant ice sheets of the last ice age, 3 million years ago.
And then when that ice sheet melted, in the subsequent warming periods, the ice would be left to survive only in the tops of the highest mountains.
That could explain ice worms on Mount Rainier, but not in Oregon.
So there is, in Oregon, there's a population of ice worms in Three Sisters. There were no continental glaciers that reached as far south as Three Sisters. So how did those ice worms get there?
Perhaps a bird carried a worm or its eggs to the glaciers on the Three Sisters.
It's an unknown. Nobody has ever seen ice worm eggs before, as far as I know.
Now, as climate change shrinks glaciers, the ice worms could be in peril.
That's the only place they can live on this glacial ice. And so if the glaciers are gone, there's really no place for them to go.
Scientists hope to learn far more about these mysterious worms. How a species thrives in one of the most extreme environments on Earth could help explain the very limits life can endure.
We want to answer questions about them. And ice worms are about one of the strangest creatures that you can imagine.
The fact that these things are out here living on these glaciers where people don't really picture life occurring, it'd be sad to see them go because they're so interesting and they're so bizarre.
Scientists have confirmed ice worms on 20 glaciers, all of them in the Pacific Northwest. And that's it for another edition of Oregon Field Guide. If you'd like to watch any of this week's stories again, we're now available to review online. Just go to our website at opb.org/fieldguide. You can also drop us a line at Oregon Field Guide, care of OPB 7140 Southwest Macadam, Portland, Oregon 97219. And until next week, thanks for joining us. We'll see you then.